Okay, I think we're going to get started here. I think we have a few more people trickling in, so I just want to remind everyone I'm also recording this today, so if anybody misses anything that's said or people that aren't here, we'll send everyone the link. So tomorrow morning, we'll send everybody the link so they can get it. I think that's everybody. Okay, so just introductions. My name is Dan. I'm the clerk for the town of Delafield. This is now my 5th year here with the town. We have, I think, most of the chiefs except for Nancy and Adelia from 3 and 4, but otherwise all the other chiefs are here. So if you have questions after and I'm busy, you can certainly ask one of the chief inspectors. Can the chiefs raise their hand real quick just so that everyone knows? All right, thank you. All right. One other thing, make sure that you've signed in and then that you grab an oath too. At the end, we'll give oaths so that everyone has those in our files. I'm also going to be navigating the screen while I'm talking, so that's why I'm sitting. So sorry if people can't see me. Hopefully you can all hear me. Okay. So the poll worker training requirements, state statute requires that all election inspectors receive at least one training every 2 years. We work in 2-year cycles, so this is the 2024-2025 cycle. Chief inspectors and myself need to acquire 6 hours of training every 2 years, whether the chiefs knew that or not, 6 hours. So, and there's no specific prescribed curriculum or length of time for training. So typically this counts as an hour and a half to 2 hours. We probably won't go the full hour and a half unless there's a lot of questions at the end. So the election inspector requirements are requirements for you folks to be poll workers. You have to be a qualified elector in the county in which municipality you are serving. So you have to reside in Waukesha County. Must be qualified elector who is a U.S. citizen, at least 18 years or older, and who has resided in Waukesha County for at least 28 consecutive days, similar to your voting restrictions. You must be able to read and write English language and otherwise be capable of good understanding. And additional criteria may be required for people who are nominated by a specific party, and the party will have those requirements for you. Nothing that the town would require, just the first 3. All right, some general election information. All the elections for the next 2 years are listed on the screen. Spring primary we didn't have. We didn't require one, but we will have a spring election and presidential preference. That'll be April 2nd. And then we'll have the fall partisan primary and the general election. And then next year we'll just have 2 elections, the spring primary if required, and then the spring election. The positions that we're going to talk about today are positions that either you've worked or will be working at some point in the next 2 years. The first is greeter, then registration, poll book table, ballot table. Ballot table and poll book table may be the same depending on how the chief set it up. And then the chief inspector. One that's not listed but we'll talk about later is absentee ballots, but we'll get to that a little later in the training. So, okay. Your job as election inspectors is to facilitate the voting process. You are going to help the chief set up the polling location before the doors open at 7 a.m. You're going to facilitate the voting process, be ready to respond to voters as they arrive, and then you'll help at the end of the night with canvassing votes, returning the ballots and the materials to town hall, and closing up that polling location. So pre-election preparation, some of this is myself, some of it is the chief inspector, some of it is all of you. The first is public test. That is where we bring out all the election equipment a week before the election, and we test every ballot, every machine to make sure that there are no issues. We also make ballots that are purposely meant to be incorrect to make sure that the machine catches incorrect ballots as well. We check for ADA compliance in all of our polling locations. Typically, these are new polling locations. When we have a new facility, we have a 30-page questionnaire that the Wisconsin Election Commission requires us to fill out. On bigger elections, we tape off election observer areas, so folks from different political parties who want to come and observe the election process. We have designated areas for them. And then we have election day setup. That's when either myself or our highway department goes and sets up the polling location before the actual day of voting. And then supply preparation is typically staff, chiefs, myself will prepare all of the forms, name tags, everything that you guys need to do your job. Just so you understand a little bit of what goes on before an election. So electioneering in the polling location. There are no politically themed attire or material such as t-shirts or buttons that either yourself or voters should be wearing. No politically themed conversations should be taking place either from you guys or from people that are coming in. And no politically themed literature such as signs, flyers, or posters should be present at the polling location. All voters may use accessible voting equipment. We have what we call express vote machines, and they are touch screens. So you insert a small ballot about this tall, this thin, into the machine. People can use a touch screen to vote. It basically eliminates the possibility of an error occurring. It's also used for people with visual impairments. As well as, I think it's just visual impairments actually, but so poll workers should be familiar with how voting equipment operates. For those machines specifically, the chief inspectors know how to operate those, so if anyone does come in that you feel may need to use the machine or asks about it, you can direct them to the chief inspector. And then all voters may receive assistance from poll workers themselves or any assistant if they have somebody that comes in with them. Assistants cannot be a voter's employer or a labor union representative. Okay, so how do you assist a voter? Well, for voter registration, poll workers can help with explaining and filling out the voter registration application to the voter. They can assist by stating the name and address of a voter if a voter is unable to state their own name or address for any reason such as a disability. Signing the poll book if a voter is physically unable to sign, get them to sign it the best way possible, even if that just means an X by their name. And then voting a ballot, a voter can be assisted in filling out the ballot or with using an ADA equipment, but they must fill out the section on the ballot that requires to put the name of the person who assisted. And then you can help with them in placing the ballot in the voting machine. Sometimes people that aren't physically disabled still need help putting their ballot in the voting machine, which I've seen that happen quite a bit. So, and then curbside voting, obviously you can help assist voters with bringing the ballot out to them physically to their car. So, and if there's questions during, raise your hand. If you have a question, I'll just repeat the question out loud and then try and answer the best I can, just so people who are watching. Yes. The question was, if someone assists in voting and they write their name on the ballot, is it a secret ballot? They're only writing the name of the assister. They're not writing the name of the person who voted. So if a poll worker helps somebody vote a ballot, you still don't know whose ballot that is. You're just writing who assisted. So. Yep. Yep, it's coming up later on. We'll talk about it, so thanks. All right, so treat all voters with respect. So don't presume. Flexibility is key. Use people first language. Avoid commentary to voters or other officials, and then treat all voters the same. So when we say don't presume anything on voters, on a voter, don't presume the voter's eligibility or their abilities based on their appearance. Many voters have disabilities that are not apparent at quick glance. And some voters may appear to have certain or limited abilities, but are able to participate independently or without limited assistance. And then flexibility, flexibility in communicating with voters of varying abilities, asking voters about their needs and how they prefer to communicate. As far as using people language first, that really means just put the person above the disability if there is one. So don't point out the disability first. Point out something about the person first. And then avoid commentary to voters or other officials. That's obvious. Don't point out people's appearances or qualifications or their perceived abilities to other people. And then treat all voters the same. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So, all right, positions and details. So the first position that a voter is going to see is a greeter. A greeter is going to be the person at the front door that's going to direct people where they vote, and if they need help in finding their ward or figuring out if they're registered to vote, and then directing that person or directing that voter to the correct table where they need to be. So this person, I would prefer that this person have some experience in the map itself, the ward map, being able to read addresses, maybe more familiar with the town, has lived here a while and understands, those lines of where, wards 4 and 5 or 4 and 2 or 3 and 2 are separated, things like that. The registration table, voters are allowed to register to vote the same day of the election and vote. Voters need to provide appropriate documentation in order to do so. And I will be offering a training probably this summer for people that are interested in voter registration. So, Chiefs, just be aware of that. I'll get you guys the date for that as well. And then poll books. So voters need to present their photo ID and state their name and address to inspectors working the poll book. Election officials have the elector sign the poll book by their name and assign a voter number and a ballot style. And then I have ballot table listed here as well. Some just give out the ballots at the poll book table. Some have a separate table completely where they take a slip to that table. So however the Chiefs decide to do it is fine with me. So I think you guys mostly hand out ballots at the poll book table now, I'm assuming. Okay. All right, and then chief inspectors, they are the supervisors of the polling location. They schedule poll workers for each election according to the list provided by myself or Karen. Poll workers will be assigned roles based on their knowledge, previous experience, and where the need is in any given election. Any issues that arise at a polling location should be addressed directly by the chief inspector, and then chiefs report directly to myself or Karen on issues during the day. The chief is responsible for making sure all paperwork is filled out correctly at the end of the election and brought back to town hall. So if there's ever an issue, they're the first line of defense, or if you don't know something, they're the first people you want to turn to. So, okay. So that's the positions. We'll kind of jump into voter qualifications. So a voter in the state of Wisconsin must meet all the criteria listed. They must be a U.S. citizen, must be 18 years of age or older. They must have resided in the town for at least 28 days prior to the election, and they must not be disqualified from voting under State Statute 6.03. That relates to being a felon, being adjudicated incompetent, and having any wager or bet on the election. Yes?
The convicted.
I believe the only way that we'd have to worry about a felon is if they were out on parole. Otherwise, they'd still be in jail. So yes, I think parole would still be ineligible to vote. Isn't there a time period too after their release that they have maybe 7 years or something like that? I'll have to look into it, but either way, there's a list that the state provides us with on who is and is not eligible.
So if they're on that list.
Then they can't be. Correct. Okay, so we'll give you a little high-level view of voter registrations. I have the form up here. I don't know if I included the form in the packet or not, but so when voters are filling out voter registrations, they must write clear and legible. If they don't, then I give the people who are registering them permission to write either next to or fill out portions of it for the voter if they're realizing that their handwriting is terrible. The yellow highlighted information shown must be filled out. So you can see they have to mark that they're qualified to vote by checking the boxes above. They have to write their name, their address, their date of birth, their Wisconsin driver's license or proof of residency, and their signature and date. The important thing here to note is their proof of residency must be the appropriate proof of residency that qualifies. If they have a driver's license or a Wisconsin ID, they must provide that number. If they do not have one, then they need to provide their last 4 digits of their Social Security. The blue highlighted areas are things that would help us out if you did have them fill it out, but if they missed it for some reason, it's not the end of the world. That would be prior registration information, meaning a prior address or a prior name. And then, I can't quite read what that says. And then that is the Social Security number. It's in blue because it's not required unless they don't have a driver's license or a Wisconsin ID. So if they don't have a driver's license, then that blue becomes yellow and they must provide that Social Security number. As I said, proof of residency documents must be provided, and we'll discuss that just in the next slide here. And then for the people that are registering folks, the yellow portions, the small ones on the bottom, are very crucial. They identify the proof of residency type and then what that document number is. And we need that information in order to register. Otherwise, what happens is this becomes a one-time registration for them to vote, and then going forward, they're no longer registered and they have to re-register. So getting this information correct is very important. As I said, rewrite the name if it's not legible, and check all voters who register on the ineligible voter list. And that is what Barb and I were talking about earlier. As far as felons in the county, we print out a full list of felony or people with felonies who are ineligible to vote. Check their name to make sure they're not on it before you continue registering. Okay, so proof of residency is information that shows that a resident resides where they do. It must be shown to the person registering the voter. It must be recorded at the bottom of the voter registration. And we'll go through all the different types of proof of residency. First one, and the easiest one you'll get, is the Wisconsin driver's license or the Wisconsin ID. These must be current. And just to differentiate the proof of residence from the photo ID, the proof of residency must be a current valid driver's license. The photo ID doesn't have to be valid, but it has to be valid from the last general election. Just so that we're... Okay, so if you're using a driver's license as a proof of residency, that driver's license must be valid, meaning it cannot have been expired for residency. If they're using it as a photo ID to vote, then it can be expired up to the last general election. Yep.
What's the date of the election?
November 2022. I don't remember the exact date. November 8th or something like that. Number 3, any other official identification card or license issued by a Wisconsin government unit body. So that's your concealed carry license or your DNR. It looks like a hunting permit. I'm sure there's other ones that I don't have here. So, 4th is any identification card issued by an employer in the normal course of business and bearing a photo of the card holder, but not including a business card. And just a reminder, these all need to have their actual address on them too. A real estate tax bill. This comes up quite a bit, especially in our office when we register people prior to. If they don't have their driver's license changed to their new address yet, many times we can just go on to the Waukesha County's website, their tax listing website, and pull up their tax bill, and that can be the proof of residency. And just a reminder that all of these documents can be shown on somebody's phone if they have a phone. They don't have to provide physical copies of them to you. Residential lease, which is effective for a period that includes the registration date, not for the first-time voters registering by mail. So that's there's a 20-day deadline for people to register by mail in our office, and that is usually 20 days prior to the election. And so this one's a little goofy, and I don't think we deal with this much because we don't have very many apartments here in the town. So. University, college, or technical institute identification card must include photo and only valid if the voter provides a fee receipt dated within the last 9 months and or housing list indicated citizenship. So they have to basically have a receipt of their tuition that has their address and all of that. This also is uncommon because this is to prove that they live in the dorm. And we don't have dorms in the town of Delafield because we don't have any colleges in the town of Delafield. Other ones are utility bills. These are the other more frequently used. We Energy bills, credit card bills, cable bills, cell phone bills. Has to commence 90 days before the election or later in order for it to be valid. So it can't be a 6-month-old We Energy bill. Banks. Oh, go ahead, Barb.
Sorry, just to clarify, all of this stuff that they're showing. Correct?
Yes, everything has to have an address. Otherwise, you're not proving that you're residing at that address. So that's a good
So
point.
I was seeing something.
Yeah. Well, I
AT&T bill.
I had to snip, so I had very limited room. I just wanted to do some advertising for AT&T and Time Warner. So. All right, but yes, good point. All of these need to show the address of the current address. And then just a typical bank statement. And then a paycheck or a check or other document issued by a unit of government. And paycheck does not mean a check from your checkbook. It means a paycheck from your employer or something like that. And then the third we don't deal with too much here, but a letter on public or private social service agency letterhead identifying a homeless voter and describing the individual's residence for voting purposes. Okay. So we'll move on to photo ID. Catch up. So the difference between photo ID and proof of residence. A photo ID does not need your current address. So if you lived in Wauwatosa, you used your We Energy bill to register, and you still have a Wauwatosa address on your license, you can still use that license as valid photo ID. Photo ID must be valid, and if expired, the expiration date must be after the last general election. This example is incorrect because I think I used this for the last training 2 years ago, but I don't remember the exact date, but like I said, it's November of 2022. And then proof of residence and photo ID address do not have to match, as we discussed. So, and then what are you looking for a photo ID? So first of all, a photo ID is required to vote. So at the poll book table, when a voter comes up, you have to ask them for their a valid photo ID. We'll go over what acceptable photo IDs are in a minute here, but just so that you understand that that is law since I believe 2016 officially, that it took actually 2014. So, what are you looking for when you look at a photo ID? You're looking at the expiration date of the photo ID. Does the photo reasonably resemble the person that's voting? And then does the name reasonably resemble what the name is in the poll book? And what are common photo IDs that are acceptable? The Wisconsin driver's license, Wisconsin ID card, a military ID if it's issued in the U.S., a U.S. passport, and all of the other acceptable photo IDs on the next page, which I have on the screen here as well. So for the most part, they're Wisconsin driver's license, but we'll get a few other ones. College ID, veteran affairs card, U.S. passport's another big one that we use. Any of those printed receipts from the DMV for a driver's license also works that are on those 8.5 by 11 sheets. And I'll let you look at the list there. So, any questions on the difference between photo ID and proof of residency? Okay. But there are some exceptions to voter photo ID. Confidential electors are exempt from photo ID. Those are people that I believe their name isn't listed in the poll book. They're confidential voters, and that's usually due to they have a situation where maybe they have restraining order or something along those lines that they want to remain confidential. Active military and permanent overseas voters are not required to provide a photo ID when they're voting absentee ballots. And then indefinitely confined voters who are restricted to their home are also not required to provide a photo ID when they receive their absentee ballot requests. Yep. Yeah, so the question was who would fit a non-military permanently overseas voter. There are people that are residents of the U.S. that move overseas and live there maybe for a job or something, and they live there for years, and they don't have any intent of coming back. They can still vote in federal elections. So they can't vote locally, but they can vote in federal elections. Absentee ballots are voters who are unable to vote on election day or are indefinitely confined to their house may cast an absentee ballot, and they can request them via mail or they can come in person. Absentee ballots are processed at the polling location on election day. Voter names are announced before opening the certificate envelope, so each absentee ballot comes in their own envelope that's sealed. They have their voter signature, and they have a witness that witnesses their signature. So on election day, when those are opened, the name is read from the envelope. The ballot is set aside separate from the envelope, and they are given a poll or a voter number, and then the ballots are fed through the voting machine just like any other ballot. The difference is we usually do stacks of 10 or 20 as they open them and feed stacks through. So those who have worked and done this before know exactly what I'm talking about. If an absentee ballot has been damaged or is unable to process, that ballot needs to be remade by 2 poll workers. If there are different political party representatives at the polling location, then 2 separate party members would come and remake that ballot. Certificate envelopes are placed in a separate envelope that's provided by the county as well. Any questions on? Yeah, go ahead. So the question was, is there any restriction to requesting an absentee ballot, basically? I think was your question. And the answer is there's no restriction. So, I mean, I request an absentee ballot. I request one every year, all year, because I'm here during election day. But anybody can go online and request an absentee ballot for themselves. The state also doesn't, I don't think, vet very well the folks that request absentee ballots as indefinitely confined voters. I think during COVID, they discovered that a lot of folks, because COVID was going on, they considered themselves as indefinitely confined to their house. And that wasn't the purpose of providing that option. That was more for people that were either older, had disabilities that couldn't leave their house. And so we're still purging some of those folks from our list that are still on that list. When you see a 27-year-old that declares themselves to be permanently or indefinitely confined, and then they come in and want to be removed, and you realize there's nothing wrong with this person. So I think there are still some issues with how the state and the My Vote system works, but it does definitely make it a lot easier for people to request those absentee ballots, which is why we've seen increasing number of absentee ballot processing over the past 4 years. Some of that's COVID, but the calm down is still a lot higher level than it was pre-COVID. I'll say that. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Yes. You mean that? Yeah, but the ballots weren't open though. So we did pre-number absentee ballots. Yeah, so instead of you guys having to interrupt the line to get a voter number, we just beforehand assign those absentee ballots a voter number so that it goes along a lot faster. So, good question though.
You know when
When they're mailed? I believe it's 4 weeks before. March 12th, I think, is the deadline for us to get our absentee ballots out for the April election, but the November election, I want to say it's like 5 weeks. It's a lot longer for the presidential. What's that? Military is, and permanently overseas is 45 days. So those ballots have already been sent for April. So, any other questions? Yep. Mm-hmm. There's no window after. So there used to be the Friday before, or the Friday following an election, they used to allow us to accept ballots that were postmarked on election day. They got rid of that. They said if it's not there by 8 o'clock on election day, then it's not counted. Same with overseas. So what we get is a lot of people that overnight and spend $20, $30 on their ballot to make sure that it does get here in time. And that's usually what I see from overseas voters. Good questions. All right, so spoiled ballots. If a voter makes a mistake on his or her ballot, they may request a new ballot. You will need to spoil their first ballot and write SB1 on the ballot. Tear a 2-inch tear into the ballot and place it in a spoiled ballot bag. You also walk back to the poll book, find the name of this voter, and write either spoiled ballot 1 or SB1 under their name. You can reissue the ballot, but do not reissue a different voter number. They still get the same voter number. And then each voter has 3 ballots. If they screw up on the third ballot, they can either cast it the way it is or not cast it at all. It's up to them. What I would recommend is if they mess up 2 ballots, send them to the express vote machine where you can't mess up a ballot on that machine. Any questions on spoiled ballots?
we shame.
Yes, shame them, absolutely.
They spoil the ballot more than.
Well, shaming them should be putting them by the express vote machine, so that would be shaming them. All right, provisional ballots. There's two specific cases for where someone can vote a provisional ballot. One is that they have a driver's license to show as their photo ID, but they are unwilling to give you their driver's license number. Oh, hold on, let me read. Let me look at that again, sorry. Okay, so this is if they're registering to vote, I apologize. So if they're registering to vote, they have a driver's license, but they refuse to give you their driver's license number. They still can register because they're not using their driver's license as proof of residency. So hopefully that's not too confusing. So they walk in, they have a We Energy bill as their proof of residence. They have a driver's license, but they don't want to give you their driver's license number for some reason. You can still register them, get their 4-digit Social Security, and then they will eventually, by the Friday after, have to provide me with that driver's license number. Otherwise, their ballot does not count. They vote provisionally. The second is that a voter does not have appropriate photo ID. So they will have up until 4 p.m. the Friday after the election to get that photo ID and present it to myself, and then we'll canvass that ballot and give it to the county. If they're not in our office by 4 p.m., then their ballot also does not count, and then we canvass nothing. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
We don't
So,
write the driver.
so just to clarify to you, when you register to vote and you have a driver's license, you must provide that driver's license number. And if you do not, then you're only provisionally voting, and really you're provisionally registering too. So that's why it's very important that if people have a photo or a driver's license or an ID card, that they must provide it either to you then or 3.5 days later to me at the clerk's office. Correct. Or remember that a photo ID, if you don't have it, you still can vote provisionally in that case. So if they don't want to show their driver's license at all or give any ID, they can vote provisionally, but they'll have to show it eventually. Far back? No, so a provisional ballot is placed into a small blue envelope that gets folded up and signed. In the poll book, it's marked as a provisional ballot as well. It gets put in its own separate ballot bag, not fed through the machine. And then if the information is provided to the clerk, we have our own board of canvass that canvasses that ballot separately and then provides it to the county where they tally up the additional vote. So it's actually hand tallied. It's not tallied through a machine at all. It happened last year. We had one last year, so I don't know, maybe a couple times since I've been here over 4 years. So not often.
So help me out here. Providing the driver's license.
Yes, the first instance is when they're registering to vote and they don't provide you with the driver's license, but they have a driver's license.
And the second instance is
Correct.
totally forgot it. So,
Or 10 minutes to 4 anytime, but yes.
yeah.
Yes, so then the second instance is at the poll book table when they're unable to provide a photo ID. So separate lines.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So if you come across this, go to your chief inspector, and then the chief inspector will walk them through the process. So you'll make sure that the voter understands, like we talked about, their ballot will not go through the voting machine. It will not be counted that day, and whatever information that they do not want to provide to you that day, they will have to provide to the clerk. If they left their photo ID at home, as Barb mentioned, encourage them to come back. You're open till 8. They can get that. They can always open that ballot out of that blue envelope and process the ballot. So, yeah, go ahead.
So, I understand this, right?
Okay.
So, when you're ready,
Out all of the information.
When you say ahead of time, you mean on election day?
no, I mean,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I've got,
Well, we won't register you then.
and it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's not happening. Yeah, so we require it here, and that's why I say either give it to you then or give it to us in the next 3 days, or else you're not getting registered. Good question. Yep.
Okay, so let's,
So the provisional ballots are tallied at a board of canvass that the town puts on. So myself and 2 chief inspectors go through. We make sure that they've provided the right number. We hand tally the votes, and then we seal all those results in an election bag. We give it to the county, and then when the county does their canvass, they canvass those, which is I think Tuesday after the election, so a week later. And then those become the official. So that's why when I post on our website the unofficial results, they truly are unofficial because there's other canvasses that haven't taken place yet.
okay,
So,
thank you.
yep. Yes.
What about someone?
Sorry, having computer difficulties. So the people that register online, they technically can't register online a week before. They have to register in person in the clerk's office after 20 days. And then those people are put in supplemental pages in the back of the book. So if they do tell you that I registered 10 days ago, I should be in the book, check the very back of the poll book, and they should be there. If they're not there for some reason, or if they did try and register online and it just didn't go through because they aren't allowed to, then they just have to re-register again.
So how close could it be?
20 days before election. Yeah, so March, I don't know what it is, 15th or something like that. My computer's restarting, so. It can be expired up until November of 2022. If it's expired before,
Election, I mean, the last general election.
yep.
After.
And if it's later than, or if it's expired before then, they'll have to find a different
Thank you.
proof. Yep. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Now we'll talk about curbside voting. All right. So voters who are physically unable to enter the polling location can receive a curbside vote. So what happens is typically they call beforehand or somebody runs in on their behalf and says, I have somebody that's in my car, they can't come in, they can't, for whatever reason, come into the polling location. So 2 election officials, again, from opposite parties, if you have opposite party election inspectors, take an absentee ballot out of the polling location to the resident and have them fill it out in their car. In the poll book, under their name, you just mark as a curbside vote so they don't have to sign the poll book. And then the voter still needs to show their photo ID to you. They're not exempt from showing their photo ID. Typically, I've seen when somebody comes in to say there's a curbside vote, they give you their driver's license directly so that you can look their name up in the poll book. And then an announcement is made at the polling location that there's a curbside vote and that a ballot is leaving the polling location. So don't just leave with a ballot unless you make it aware to everyone in the room that you're doing that. Any questions on curbside voting? It comes up often. Yep.
Does the ballot go with like a clipboard?
Yeah, we typically do clipboards, just and then a pen. It's not a special pen, just a black pen, and then they can fill that out. Yes.
When you say
Yeah, that's correct. We take absentee ballots here, so because we do curbside voting here quite often before, so I think that's why I said absentee ballot. But yes, you'll take a regular ballot. Yep. Thanks. Okay. Challenge voters. Whoop. Sorry. Go ahead, Barb.
Who's initialing this?
I don't think it matters. Just whoever is issuing it from the poll book table can be the same people that normally do.
Okay, thank you.
Just make sure that the 2 parties go out there, so you don't have to have them initial. Okay. All right, challenge voters. I would rather just skip this slide, but we'll go through it. I haven't had a challenge voter in, gosh, 13 years, but it does happen. So any qualified elector may challenge a voter who they believe does not meet the qualifications to be a voter. So they must have a reasonable cause. They must fill out a challenge documentation section on EL 104C on the inspector statement. The notations on the inspector statements and the poll list must be marked. There's a challenge documentation worksheet that's in the chief inspector binder. If it comes up, just get your chief inspector and they'll walk you through, or they'll take over and then they'll probably call me. So
how often does this happen here?
I've never, have you guys ever had it happen? I've never had it happen, and I've been doing this for, like I said, 13 years, so. So election day process, at 7 a.m. the polls open at each of the 3 polling locations. Voters can enter the location and begin voting right at 7. Make sure to use the same clock when you open the polls as you do when you close the polls. So if it's somebody's cell phone, use that same cell phone, or watch or clock in the room, whatever it is. Chief inspectors will instruct you to keep checking voter number totals with the voting machine to make sure that your counts are correct. So that means the people that are on the poll book table, whatever your last voter number was, they'll compare it to the voting machine and make sure that those numbers match, or however they do it, because you may have some people that are voting, so it might throw it off a little bit. But the biggest goal for me, for you guys, is to make sure that your numbers are right on, so that at the end of the day or the following day, we don't spend hours in the poll books looking for missing voters or missing ballots, or either or. Busy times are usually in the morning, during lunch, and then right after a work day, I think, unless that's changed. In November, it's going to be busy all day. So, and then just so that everyone's aware, April is also one of the busier elections. It's typically anywhere from a 60 to 75% turnout because you have the presidential preference. Not quite as busy as November, but it's still pretty high turnout. So expect to be busy all day long as well. So closing the polls, close polls at 8 p.m. An inspector will typically get in line at the end of the last voter at 8 p.m. to designate them as the last person. At that time, the chief inspector will make an announcement, "Hear ye, the polls are closed," and then you guys can begin your process of closing down the polling location. Once all the ballots have been put through the machine, the polls will be closed on the machine. That will generate result tapes to automatically be printed, and then once the tapes have been printed, the machine automatically transmits those results to Waukesha County. Okay. All required paperwork needs to be signed by 3 chief inspectors and returned to town hall at the end of the night. So that's why if you have a chief that maybe keeps a couple extra poll workers around at night, it's to make sure that they have 3 signatures on everything. If there are designated election officials from a party, they need to sign as much paperwork as they can, as long as they're working on that shift. So oftentimes there'll be a morning shift that has a designated party affiliate. They might not have signatures on everything because most of the signatures comes at later in the day or at night. 2 other poll workers go to town hall with the chief. Typically it's either a backup chief and somebody else. They can designate that person throughout the day, but that is in case there's any signatures while I'm going through the paperwork that they have missed. I have 3 people there so that they can get all the signatures and not call people the next day to get those signatures. And then the chief has a checklist provided to them that shows everything that needs to be turned in to me at the end of the night. That includes provisional ballots, write-in tally sheets, inspector statements, spoiled ballot envelopes, damaged or remade ballot envelopes, original certificate envelopes, tape totals, and poll books. And I'm sure there's more, but those are the main ones. So election observers, anyone other than candidates, then a candidate up for election has the right to be present at a polling location and to observe the process. So what we tend to do, we'll do it during the November. I don't know if we'll do it during April, is we'll establish an observer area for people to sit. They have an area, a distance of 3 to 8 feet that they have to keep away from the voting process. So they can't be in your face or in voters' faces. They have to remain a certain distance away. They may examine or take a photograph of the poll list so long as they do not interfere with the election process or the responsibilities of the election officials. Any other use of cameras or recording equipment by election observer at the polling location is prohibited. Yeah, go ahead.
When you say poll list,
Yeah, they can take a picture of the poll list. Okay. Yeah, there's nothing, there's no confidential information in a poll list besides your name and address, but all of that is public record because it's in WisVote and wherever else. Cell phones, photos, and videos. Voters may silently use their cell phones. Voters may take photos or videos of themselves if they're not disruptive, and they may not take photos of other people or their ballots. Election observers may use their cell phone silently, but cannot make or take phone calls, and they may not take photos of themselves or others, so they're more restricted. And then the media are permitted to use photography, videography, if not used to record how an elector has voted and that they're not disruptive. Contact with voters should be limited, and interviews should be held outside the voting area in the parking lot or something like that. Yes?
I think
Yeah, I mean, if
I think we just
I would say if you're taking photos of somebody and they don't know they're taking their photos and don't agree with it, I would say that's when there's an issue. All right, and then electioneering. So the definition is any activity intended to influence voting at an election. Electioneering is prohibited on public property within 100 feet of any entrance to a building containing a polling place. Some considerations are bumper stickers, exit polls, bake sales, and other activities. So I think we did have a bake sale once at one of our polling locations like 5 years ago, and we thought it was great, and then we got complaints, so then we ended up not doing it anymore. So they thought we were trying to get them to vote a certain way, but we just wanted the money. So all right, and then voting machines. I think I'm missing. Here we go. So there's two machines. One is the tabulator machine, which is where your actual ballots are fed through. It's called the DS200 tabulator. It's the one that counts the actual votes. It has a chargeable backup, which allows to function a short amount of time. I don't know how long it actually functions, but as long as it's charging, I want to say it's 2 or 3 hours that it'll still hold power if a power goes out. These use a cellular line to transmit election results to the county. It's a one-way line, so it's not penetrable from a security standpoint. Jams, these are known to jam up a few times. If a ballot jams, just get the chief inspector, she'll open it up, and the screen should tell you whether a vote has either counted or not counted, so whether you need to feed it through again or whether it's been processed. And these machines will alert if there's any errors in voting, so if there's a cross vote, an overvote. I don't know if it does an undervote. It does an undervote? Okay. So it'll beep, it'll let the voter know, and you can either feed the ballot through anyways. Okay, that's what I thought. So overvotes or cross votes, not undervotes. It'll alert the voter, and the voter can either take that out and correct it or push it through. Typically, they wouldn't want to push it through unless they just don't care. So, and it does process an undervote, but it only processes an undervote if the ballot's completely blank. So, and then express votes are not tabulator machines; they're just ballot marking machines, and they're just to serve as an ADA compliant machine for those who have visual impairments or other disabilities, and they're also a good backup in case you run out of ballots. Then you can use that as a resource. So, yes.
How does that?
Yeah, so once you have your ballot marked through the express vote machine, it'll spit it back at you, and you actually feed it through the express vote, or through the DS200. I'm sorry. So all ballots, whether they're made on the express vote or on a regular ballot, are fed through the DS200. Yes, Barb.
The DS200 is.
Correct.
Or am I-
Yep, they're both ES and S machines.
Okay,
They're not Dominion.
They're not.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Somebody comes in and asks.
Yeah, nope. And there's a chance we're going to get new machines in the next 2 to 3 years, is what ES&S is saying, because of requirements from the state where we need to have clear screens for our DS express votes, and just the laws are always changing about technology. So, and I'll think about maybe going to digital poll books in the next couple of years. We'll see. We'll see how many poll workers quit, or if we'll do a canvas first, and then we'll find out. So, all right. So then we have wards, school districts, Senate, Assembly, congressional districts. So the town is broken up, and the state is broken up into these different districts. So each municipality has different wards. So we have 11 wards in the town. We have different school districts. The school districts may split those boundaries and may require a completely different ballot style. The town has Kettle Moraine, Arrowhead, and 2 different arrowheads, at Arrowhead Heartland and at Arrowhead Lake Country, and they have a Waukesha school district. The state assembly and congressional districts will never split a ward, but may split a polling location. So that means that Ward 3 and Ward 4, they're not split, but one might have a different congressional district than the other. I don't think they do, but just as an example, they may, and that's how those work. And the poll books will designate and indicate a ballot type. That ballot type will designate typically the different school districts, and that's usually the only difference we have in the ballots. Oh, and we also have sanitary districts as well every other year, and those typically double the amount of ballot styles that we need. So election statistics and trends. The voter turnout for spring of 2020, which would equate to the same as the spring of 2024, because that was the last presidential preference, we had a 62.9% turnout. And then fall, we had a 25.4%, and then November, we had a 91.8%. Yep. And then the spring of 22, it doesn't really equate because of the fact that it didn't have presidential preference on it. So, but fall of 2022, we actually had a 47.2% turnout, and then we had a November turnout of 81.8% in 2022. So that would have been a governor election. So I anticipate falls 2024 being somewhere in between the 22 and the 2020 number. So probably somewhere in that 35 to 40%. And November, I expect even higher than what we did in 2020. Because remember, 2020 was also a COVID year, so we had a lot of absentee voting. So I think your numbers at the polling locations will be higher, and your overall turnout will be higher. And then we just have absentee statistics on the bottom. I still think are kind of skewed, although the spring of 2020 is probably a lot closer to what you're likely to see at 19.4% of registered voters voting absentee. As far as percentages go, not necessarily the number. So these used to be a lot easier to compare, but since COVID, it's impossible to really tell. There was redistricting back in 2020, which came effective in 2022. There's a little bit of a change down in wards 7 and 8. It didn't affect the polling location. It just affected what ward you're in, essentially. So there's really no change to that. And then there was also some boundary changes between Ward 3 and Ward 4. We had to take some people from Ward 4, I believe, and shuffle them to Ward 3. Still no changes to where people vote. It just changes their ward number. And then new pending election laws. Municipalities may start in-person absentee voting no more than 2 weeks before an election. This started, it says last year, may have even been the year before that. So we used to be able to start the 2 weeks before the Monday, and now they said specifically 2 weeks from election day, meaning Tuesday. So Tuesday till the week after Friday, we can do in-person absentee voting. In-person or absentee ballots can only be requested via email from permanently overseas voters and military voters. That also changed probably 2 or 3 years ago. And then all absentee ballots must be filled out in their entirety. The municipal clerk cannot make corrections to add witness addresses to the ballot. There was something that just came out about a month ago regarding this. So they had said that a witness address had to have the address, the municipality, and the zip code. Now, if a voter's witness is, let's say, has the same last name and they write same under address, if we can verify that they will live in the same address, then we can accept that. Or if they write the street address and then write Delafield but don't write a zip code, now we can determine if that is correct and we can accept that. So they're still a little bit more lenient than what they initially ruled, which said that it had to have all of those things in order to qualify. We'll see if that changes, but for now, we can take those. And then the absentee ballot envelope looks different as well. I couldn't get the whole thing on here, so I split it in half. I apologize, but you'll still get the label over here, and then you'll get it just looks different, but it all basically has the same information on it. And any questions?
I have one.
Yep. Correct. Yep. The person voting the ballot is the only person that can bring their ballot. So you can only bring your own ballot. You can't bring your wife's. You can't bring your kids. You can't bring anybody else's. And that's extremely difficult on election day to explain that to people because they don't have time to put it in the mail as opposed to in the clerk's office. It usually happens on a Thursday or Friday. They still have time to maybe get it to us in the mail. We also aren't allowed to have drop boxes here at Town Hall, so you can't just drop off your ballot in a drop box. It has to either be mailed or delivered in person. Good question. Yep.
And if you deliver it.
Correct. It has to be yours. You have a-
This-
No, so we were able to get back into the Church of the Resurrection. So we are not going to be at the schoolhouse anymore. So those postcards should be going out, I believe, the first week in March or the last week in February, one of the two. But the people in 3 and 4 will get those postcards. So if you're in 3 and 4, you're back to the church. So enjoy that kitchen. It's a nice kitchen. Any other questions? You first. Yeah, it's up to your chiefs. We typically just do half days. Full days are a little long, so, yep. Yep. Oh, you, sorry.
Maybe this is the chief's question.
I would say bring a snack. We do provide lunch, and we provide like either muffins or donuts in the morning, but they're usually just small round, what do you call those sandwiches? Sliders, maybe, something. And then typically some chips and water, so you can bring your own snack, or if you're fussy, you can bring your own salad. I don't provide salad, so. Well, I'll be around after the training. I'll end this, and hopefully it goes through in 2 parts. If not, I will just do the whole thing by myself and send it out to everyone. So let me get out of here. Oh, yes. I can get out of here first. Hold on.